Hello, and welcome to the fifth of our six-part podcast series featuring voices from the 2026 Old Salt Festival in the Blackfoot Valley of Montana. The Old Salt Festival tagline, Land is Kin, reflects the philosophy of the great poet, essayist, and novelist Wendell Berry. Today, Michael speaks with Mary Berry, his daughter, and the executive director of the Berry Center in Newcastle, Kentucky. Mary and the Berry Center are dedicated to sharing and demonstrating the critical importance of agrarian culture, small farms, and community through a variety of activities which Mary and Michael explore. Enjoy the show.
Mary Berry is a gem in the crown of the community of people across the nation dedicated to fixing our food system. I can imagine that being the daughter of one of America's greatest writers could be a burden that might cause one to shrink from the public eye or become somehow inflated by the reflected light. This is not the case with Mary. She is grounded, humble, yet passionate, and determined to articulate and demonstrate the essence of her family's defense of agrarian values, small farms, and rural communities. Mary is a writer in her own right, and an eighth-generation farmer with her husband, Steve Smith, who started the first CSA in the entire state of Kentucky. The Berry Center, which she has led since its founding in 2011, is dedicated to not only the work of her father, but also her uncle, who was a state senator, and her grandfather, who was a leader of the Burley Tobacco Growers Cooperative. They all work to preserve small farm agriculture, and the Berry Center is a keeper of the flame, located in the rural town of Newcastle, Kentucky. Mary travels all over the country sharing the good word, and she's been to Sonoma County several times over the years and was recently at UC Berkeley in conversation with Michael Pollan and others to discuss the 50th anniversary of her father's seminal book, The Unsettling of America, Culture and Agriculture. Following this podcast conversation, I read the book, again, cover to cover, and this was the first time I read it cover to cover. It's a great warning of what is robbed from this nation as we allow industrial thinking and industrial agriculture to devastate our rural communities. Her impressive team maintains an archive of papers from her family's work, a bookstore, reading circles focusing on agrarian themes, a direct marketing project for local beef producers, and a demonstration farm that teaches sustainable timber and pasture practices, as well as uses of hand tools. They also host cultural events, and I thoroughly enjoyed one during my brief visit last April. And I plan to repeat that visit in 2027. So let me know if you want to join me. I would love more people to know about the Berry Center and its good work. And Kentucky is a beautiful state. As you will hear from our Old Salt conversation today, Mary is resolute in her defense of small farms, yet empathic and wise. Let's begin. Mary Berry, great to see you here at the Old Salt Festival. Really curious, what brought you?
A couple of years ago, a dear friend of mine, who's actually the chair of the board of the Berry Center, met a guy, Maggie.
I just met her,
Maggie, who's wonderful, a farmer from county close to us in Kentucky. Mm-hmm. She got to know a doctor who does a podcast, and if you want more details, you'll have to ask me later.
Okay.
She asked me to listen to one of his podcasts then Cole Mannix was a guest. And first of all, Cole talked about the work he was doing with Old Salt, which is very much like what we're doing at the Berry Center with Our Home Place Meat.
Right, which I took a tour of and talked about when I was there.
So we wanted at the Berry Center to connect with someone who's doing the same thing and just talk about our experiences and what's going well and what's going badly and so on. We did that. But also Cole talked about my father, Wendell Berry's work so thoughtfully and beautifully that added to how much I thought it would be nice to have a conversation with him. I mean, he clearly understood it deeply.
So he came, when he said, please come out, you said, absolutely, I'm coming.
Yes, I think it took several conversations, but yeah. And really, it's a wonderful event, and who wouldn't want to be in a place this beautiful?
No, it is
Now,
beautiful.
it would be nice if I could walk home from here.
Yes. So I think there's a few things we need to do in this conversation. First is, I think it would be really good for you to just talk about the Berry Center, like why you started it, what your mission is, and the different activities that you do. And then I think it would be really interesting to talk about the unsettling of America's 50th anniversary and what you're about to do for that.
I'd be delighted to.
That I think would be really stimulating as well. So let's start with why Mary Berry decided to create the Berry Center and become the leader of that.
After farming for a living, I was raised in a farm family and then farmed for a living from 1981 until I started the Berry Center, actually. But along about 2009, it just became hard for me to try to understand what was happening with the local food movement and why, after decades of a local food movement, we hadn't even begun to touch the dominant industrial agriculture culture of agriculture, which is running farmers out of business and ruining the land and destroying rural communities. Certainly the place I'm from and love the most, Henry County, Kentucky, has suffered under industrial agriculture. And so it just seemed to me, again, that the local food movement had all of the weaknesses of movements, which is they sort of float above the economy and they don't deepen into cultural change. So I went to my father, again, about 2009. I had a long list of things that I thought needed to be worked on. Because we were losing ground, literally and figuratively, so quickly. And I wanted to work on the miseducation of farming. I wanted to study...
The miseducation of farming.
Farmers, I should...
Miseducation of farmers.
And how that was influencing their farming. I also wanted to study the Burley Tobacco Cooperative instead of forgetting about it. We can talk more about that if you want, but that is the cooperative that my family, my grandfather wrote the legislation that became federal law that protected small farmers in Kentucky and the 8-state Burley Belt for almost 70 years. I thought and it had been forgotten. Remarkably, I mean, it ended in 2004, so 5 years later. I was going to farm meetings. I was on the FSA state board. I was on the board of another grassroots farm organization, and people just, had just forgotten it, I think because of the stigma of tobacco. And there were about 5 other things on the list, and Daddy said, well, it sounds like you're starting a center, and I thought, maybe I'm starting a center. And 2 years later, the Berry Center opened in Newcastle, Kentucky, and we are working. I'm proud that for 15 years later, we're working on the things that I had on my list. We're working on the things that I said in a vision I wrote for the Berry Center, that the things that we needed to work on are what we're working on. So our mission really is to put my father's work to benefit small farmers in their communities. And that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and I had an opportunity to visit in April, and it was brief, couple days, but it was beautiful because I saw an array of activities. We talked a lot about the meat portion of the business, and went actually to the slaughter facility and spent the day talking with your team about that. And then we went to a very interesting afternoon session on your demonstration farm, where you mentioned this yesterday, where you're teaching people about kind of sustainable yield, the work of their woodlands, how to handle their woodlands, and then also rangeland work. But then we did this.
Kentucky, we call that pasture land.
Pasture land, thank you. And then what was really beautiful and touching for me was the conversation, the book reading we did, the poetry reading we did, and the conversation with urban and rural residents of Kentucky and California. There were 3 of us from California. There was the...
See how big-hearted and broad-minded we are?
Yeah, I'm telling you. It was, and then there were people online. So I don't even know where they were.
Well, I don't either, but the person who runs that program, Leah Bands, could tell you.
Leah was a really good facilitator of a conversation.
Yeah.
We did readings, and we went out in the field and talked about this poet's words that were really the words of a farmer and their worldview, which I found very stimulating. So talk to me about, and you told me while I was there about your book project where you provide books to communities. Mm-hmm. Talk about that piece of the work.
I don't think that you can work on the health of small farmers and their communities without thinking hard about a culture that will support good land use. We don't just have an agricultural problem in this country, we have a cultural problem. And we have a culture and an economy that is destroying the land and the people. It just simply is. So when I started the Berry Center, I knew that we needed to work on the culture and an economy. And the things that you have just spoken so nicely about are part of the cultural work. We teach not just the skills needed to live on a small farm and to take good care of it and to do the work needed yourself. We also talk about the long lineage of agrarian literature and art that my father has a place in. Mm-hmm. I don't think people are thinking deeply enough about the cultural piece of this. Daddy talks about it in The Unsettling of America, that it turns out the loss of a culture is devastating because it passes on knowledge and skill. It tells people how to do the work they need to do and how to do it well. Mm-hmm. And we've lost it. We've lost it relatively quickly. And so these books, these poems, these paintings, songs, and so on, hold that culture. The skills need to be taught as well, but they hold and honor a culture that we need again.
Culture brings stability.
Well,
and we don't have stability in this country anymore. We are unstable and all over the place.
Also, young people who want to get into farming don't have what I had. I mean, I came home to live and farm in 1981, and I was one of many young people farming in Henry County, Kentucky. I was also surrounded by older people who cared about me, not just family, but also neighbors and friends who had farmed there all their lives. I can tell you one story that I think about so often is an older farmer came to work with us every day when we were putting in our first crop of tobacco. Now, we'd all worked in tobacco before, but this was the first time it had been up to us. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, it's so nice that Phil Powell is coming, and he's here every day, and he just likes to spend time with us, and we were having some good meals and so on. But it was later when I thought, what he's doing is he's keeping us from making mistakes that without his help we would make. Mm-hmm. So he was putting himself to use. He was mentoring without any organization needed, or he was just doing what the culture did. Mm-hmm. And now that culture has eroded, and in some places is entirely gone. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one thing that I love about this festival, this Old Salt Festival. I do think that out here in the West, that there is, especially in cattle country, they've held on to some kind of sense of themselves as farmers and ranchers that I think in Kentucky, because we lost the culture of small farming and tobacco farming so quickly, it just left people reeling.
Yeah,
and,
I can see how, that makes sense to me. So you do these courses, and you can sign up for them, and I'll just say that I signed up for a course on Unsettling of America, a study course on Unsettling of America, and I missed the first episode last week, actually, so which is sad. But the good thing is I did get the email saying it's recorded, so I will be listening to it. And actually tomorrow when I'm driving probably is a good time to do it, or day after tomorrow, but because I have to drive 5 hours. So you're doing that but it's not just for rural people. It's for urban people too, it seems to me.
Absolutely. The urban-rural divide is possibly the most ruinous divide in our divided country.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to invite urban people into the countryside and into the celebration and the care of the land and so on. I mean, most of us are urban now.
Mm-hmm.
The last statistic I saw was like 15% of us now live in country places, and 0.75% or less is farming now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're
in trouble.
We're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And we actually were talking a little bit about this earlier in an earlier podcast today with two young women who are very involved in working in rural communities, trying to bridge these gaps. And one of the things that we were talking about is that it seems really important to bring urban people to the rural centers because of that power imbalance between urban and rural.
Well, and there's certainly an imbalance, but all people eat. And we all live from the land. We live from the ground. And I think we've lost the knowledge of that, or the feeling that everything comes from the ground. I think Elon Musk is trying to convince us it doesn't, but
right.
It actually does.
It's on Mars.
And I say, go on.
Right. But I totally agree. People, I mean, your father actually, in the many stories and books that I've read that he's written, and also in other people's writing, who really write about food systems and agriculture, if we don't get the relationship to the natural world and working lands, civilization is greatly at risk. Today, I don't know if you were in this session early this morning, the R Bar L Ranch was speaking about their work with grizzlies. Mm-hmm. Were you there for that?
I was there for most of it.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because it was, again, about relationship. Which your father talks about and you talk about, relationships, the need for relationships, the destruction of relationships has been part of the destruction of rural culture.
Well, the beautiful thing about what I believe they were talking about is that it's bringing together conservation groups, environmentalists, and farmers together on what should be a shared passion or interest, instead of the more normal we will conserve, we will put aside wildlands and parks and so on, which of course we should. But we can't let working landscapes just destroy the rest of the country.
Right.
That's absurd.
Right.
So I don't think environmentalists have thought enough about working landscapes and working people. I know they haven't.
Mm-hmm. I do think that's changing, though, because of what we saw here. But I also see examples of that in California. The Department of Natural Resources for the first time has embraced for the last 8 years the ranchers and the farmers, working with them because they realized, my God, they actually do so much for species, for water, for climate. I mean, plus they feed us. So, I mean, it is awakening in a way. I think the modernity thing made us kind of drunk in a way. Like, we lost contact with the reality.
Well, I think that since we got here and destroyed what was here,
meaning North America.
Yeah. I mean, excuse me. Yes, not just Montana.
Yeah.
We've thought that there was so much.
Yes.
This kind of sort of limitless amounts of everything we could ever need. Well, it turns out that's not true. And I think we are getting to the end of limitless thinking. Now, whether or not we can change is another question.
Well, that's why you're doing what you're doing.
Right. Well, it should have changed a long time ago.
Yes, but it didn't. But I want to get back to the Berry Center because, and maybe we can then segue into this Unsullied America because they're tied, right? I mean, you said something which your father's also said, and I remember thinking about it hard, like distrusting movements. Movements have flaws, but yet the center is part of something that you would consider a movement, which is trying to reconnect urban and rural, trying to fix our food system. There is a trend anyway, but talk about, I mean, I want you to go a little bit deeper into that. What is the problem with movements?
Well, I think that we can agree that we've had movement after movement after movement, And some movements seem to have had more success than others in changing the actual culture of the places we live, but not deeply change.
Are you thinking about the racial justice movement?
Yes.
Are you thinking about marriage equality? Gay rights? What do you think about?
It seems like marriage equality and gay rights is done a little better at actually changing people's hearts and minds, and thank goodness. I think that movements have suffered from the culture they are existing in to some degree. For instance,
like they're biased. They can't see things.
It is not. It's not okay for me to say, as a rural person and in a place where people are losing farms and losing. We've just lost a lot. There's terrible problems of addiction and all the isms. It's not okay for me to say, you urban people, you've had it all, and it's our turn now.
Right.
We can't say that. What we need to be saying is we need to come together around how we should be living now, with the way it is now. We should talk about limits and how much is enough, and change our ideas about mobility and upward mobility and where do we get satisfaction in life, and look at some of the problems that we've got. People can't follow callings in this country now. Not if you want to be a small farmer or a small business person. It's darn hard. So I just think we need to think hard about the people, who we are and how we're living. And
not put it on a movement.
Movements, there are always, and there will always be, I'm afraid, reasons for people to object and to protest and to say no and to go to meetings and carry placards. That's all great, but that's not all there is to it.
No, that's absolutely true.
We've got to change the culture that we're living in, and that starts with our own hearts and our own minds, and goes from there. I think that's why in The Unsettling of America, Daddy talks about the crisis of culture, but also the crisis of character.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's truth in that. I've often thought about why do we not, in my view, I have a John's view maybe, but I don't see the leaders that we've had in the past, like leaders of character. I did see this thing today, a little video clip of Obama's dedication yesterday, and the speeches that were given about him as a person, like not losing his temper, all these different things that he did when he was president. And, saying this, my biases are clear, which is really interesting because I'm right now feeling fear about talking about that because I'm trying to bridge the gap between urban and rural people. And oftentimes, being a supporter of a guy like Obama will turn off someone that I'm dealing with in rural communities.
Well,
what do you do about that?
I don't worry too much about it. Mm-hmm. I am careful with speech, but it's not about, Obama, as who would not prefer a gentlemanly, smart man as president, someone who can control himself and who loves his wife and children and who is funny. And, I'll say that to anybody. What I don't say for instance, when we started our home place meet at the Berry Center, I did not invite young farmers to join us to sequester carbon.
Right.
Or
right.
I didn't
regeneratively farm.
No. Oh, Lord,
right,
no.
Right,
I didn't. Or even sustainably farm, or whatever word we're going to use now.
Right.
What I did say was, you've been invited here because of the way you are managing your farms, and we want to invite you to be a part of this effort we're making to bring stability to the beef cattle market and to have quality pay. Mm-hmm. Now, I will tell you this. That was 2016.
Different pricing in the market then.
Oh, very different. But the thing I want to say is, at this point in farm meetings, I'm still not going to talk about regenerative and so on. I'm kind of sick of it myself. But I can say things I couldn't say in 2016 or didn't feel comfortable saying, because we've stuck to our word. We have done what we said we'd do. The farmers have done what they said they would do, and we've gotten ourselves to here. And so now I think there are all kinds of possibilities as a community that didn't exist before we started our home place mead. I grew up in a community that all kinds of things were possible. I mean, honestly, before the end of the tobacco program, Henry County, like all of Kentucky, was solidly Democratic, large D, capital D, not large.
Right.
Well, I'd call them Roosevelt Democrats. Maybe conservative Democrats, but strongly loyal members of the Democratic Party.
It was when the party was really about working people, too.
Yes. And what I've seen since the end of an economy, if you pull an economy out from under communities, people aren't going to be grateful. Wes Jackson puts it this way: if you pull an economy out from under people and replace the economy with basketball courts and programs, people aren't grateful. So what's happened is that economy was pulled out from under people, and suddenly people who were good farmers and their children who were planning to farm suddenly couldn't.
Yeah.
Just simply couldn't.
Well, their culture was destroyed.
So their culture was destroyed. And when the economy and culture is destroyed, people get unsettled and they get mad.
Right.
And they often get mad at the wrong people.
So you said the word unsettled.
Yeah.
So that book was written 50 years ago, which is 1975, 74.
Well, it was written in, it's 50 years next year.
Next year,
it's
okay.
2027.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So talk about your hope for what you're about to talk about what you're about to embark on and what your hope is with that. Because the book was prescient.
Yes, I would agree. I'm doing a limited series podcast to talk to some people from one end of the country to the other, which requires me to be on planes. But anyway,
Yes.
About the book, about where we are now. So the book is as relevant today, except for a few names that people won't recognize anymore, like Earl Butts, the very appropriately named Earl Butts. It is as timely right now as it was 50 years ago. Omnivore's Dilemma, I'm going to be talking to Michael Pollan. It's 20 years old. Fast Food Nation, I'll be talking to Eric Schlosser, is 25 years old. There's a new book out, 2 years old, called Barons, by a guy named Austin Frerick, about how policy has gotten us here. It's not as if we haven't had the resources to know what was happening. But the economy has just chugged right on.
And what does that tell you about? So that happened for a reason, right? And I'm very struck by what I said it earlier. It's kind of like we got drunk as a nation on something. I think it has to do with a hunger for wealth or comfort, or it's affluence that kind of messed us up. I mean, what is the antidote? Is that what you're doing with the books and the reading? Is that the antidote?
Well, I want people, I think we just keep needing to do what needs to be done. The right thing that's right in front of us to do. I mean, that's what you're doing at Roots of Change. That's what I'm doing at the Berry Center. We just keep on. We don't, as my father says, we don't win, but we don't lose either. We just keep on.
Yeah, I like that.
So
we don't win, we just keep on.
And I think the important thing, for those of us who love people that are younger than we are, we're coming up under what's coming apart with something solid. I mean, if we can, in Henry County, Kentucky, keep adding farmers to this program we're doing, then at some point, Louisville, Kentucky, our closest city, is going to find it harder to bring food in cheaply and easily. It just simply is going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
And if Louisville then is surrounded, or there are economically healthy farmers raising good things to eat nearby will be better off.
Yeah.
Now, why Louisville and its leadership, after listening to me talk to them for 25, 30 years, hasn't figured this out themselves, that's another question. But I got tired of waiting. And as my husband says, the cavalry ain't coming.
Right. So
we've done it ourselves.
Yeah. And I think actually it is the right move. I do believe that that's the right move, because I do think you're right. It's going to get more and more expensive. There are a lot of reasons why, and people are going to be, we were just having a conversation with a guy earlier who's investing in companies, and he was saying it's obvious, it's growing. People are interested in knowing where their food's coming from. They want good, authentic food. They want to know the source. They want to trust it.
Well, there is no problem with that. I'm glad to hear it. But I've been hearing that since I was about 21 years old,
right.
And I'm significantly older than that
right.
now.
Well, it's been slow, and I think things take a long time.
Well,
it takes a long time.
I think during the years of what I would call a local food system, the number of farmers has just dropped, and rural communities are looking worse and worse.
True.
And that's all over the country.
No, it's particularly bad now, I think.
I think it's been, I know what happened at home.
Right.
I've got 20 years.
Right. And I think, we don't have time to go into it, but the whole story of the Burley Tobacco Program is a really important story, because there was a time when we understood that we needed to control the amount of a product that's produced. You talked about it yesterday in your talk about...
I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, we have to. We're overproducing in this country.
Right.
That's really good for the manufacturers of food.
Oh, yeah.
Of the cheap, unhealthy food. It's good for them. It's not good for the farmers. Until we relearn that lesson, we're going to continue to have the problem. But I think here's where my point about the local food system. People are paying more for their food if they know where it's coming from, which is in one way getting the parity you want. That is the value of the food, the true value of the food. I do see that happening in many places. Maybe it's not happening, but it seemed like it's happening in Louisville.
You've got farm market prices. That's the thing that I don't think we've done, and I know land grants aren't doing it, is actually figuring out what parity really is.
Yes.
Years ago in Kentucky, there was a local food hub called Grasshoppers that closed because of many reasons, I think. But there was a kind of post-mortem done about it because there was so much public money in it. And it was full of the news that some things should have been managed differently. It was started by good people who wanted to do a good thing. But they started off thinking that what they needed to do was pay farmers as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Not based on anything, just as much as possible. So there was a sidebar in the post-mortem, a quote from a tomato guy who'd been providing grasshoppers with tomatoes, who said, "I told them they were paying me too much.
Wow.
I told them if they would pay me 60 cents a pound, I would raise tomatoes for them till hell freezes over."
Right.
What he was saying was, first of all, he had some numbers behind that 60 cents a pound, and that, by the way, is, years ago now, some years, 20 years, maybe even 20 years. Mm-hmm. But what he was saying is, I'd trade my right to gamble for a stable price. Mm-hmm. So that's what infrastructure should be doing, bringing stability to farmers. And then we might even be able to talk about, why does local food really need to be as expensive as
it is today,
as people think it needs to be?
Right.
If farmers didn't have to do everything, maybe they would be happy to work with a system that's bringing them parity.
You said that yesterday morning. You said food prices might even drop if we do this.
I think some would. I don't know enough about some things to say that, but I do think that is something that we just haven't had any imagination about. Let's look into it.
Well, part of the problem is food prices are partially the way they are is because the outlets are controlled by very few companies, and they can they're oligopolies. They can control the price.
Right.
They're paying to the farmer and what they charge to the consumer. So that's part of the problem.
Well, if you actually talk about what it costs to move food, and it's going to cost more and more, already is.
Right.
If you talk about packaging and marketing and all, and so on and so forth, then of course I'm not talking about potato chips here.
Right.
I'm talking about potatoes.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a race to the bottom for sure. And there will always need to be programs and good people making sure that people who need help and need food get it.
Yeah.
But I just don't think we've used any imagination.
Yeah.
Enough imagination.
Well, I we're out of time for today, but I want to say this. I would really like to have another conversation.
Okay.
And maybe two kind of topics we could dig into a little more, because what you said, I actually believe that processing should be more like a utility. Like, we should think of processing facilities as utilities rather than profit-making centers. Utilities are public-private partnerships that are, in a way, the parity, they seek to have parity around pricing for energy or water. We need to think of processing that way for food systems.
It's a very good point. I mean, do we need food less than we need water?
Right. Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We need it all, I guess. But,
right.
Well, Michael, I'd be glad to talk to you anytime you want to talk to me.
Yeah. So I want to also, so tell people when should we start to begin watching for these series of conversations you're going to have about the unsettling?
Our plan is to get them out during the first month of 2027. A new edition of The Unsettling with a new afterword or forward. I can't remember which one, how they're going to use it, but Daddy has written a new piece for it.
Good.
And so there will be a new edition out sometime in January 2027. And so we're hoping and planning that the podcast we'll start releasing episodes.
Great.
Then.
Good. Well, we will help get the word out.
Thank you.
Because it's obviously going to be a very interesting conversation.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. So. Good to see you here.
Good to see you. Always.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed the show, hosted by Roots of Change, a program of the Public Health Institute, a nonprofit organization dedicated to building a healthier world.